The Parthian Shot, shooting backwards. One of the most infamous techniques of the mounted archer is of course the Parthian Shot. The rider is at full gallop, seemingly fleeing from his enemies in panic. Little do they know that this was all part of the plan. Then, at the right time, the mounted archer twists around on his horse and delivers the Parthian Shot. Shooting backwards while riding forwards was a technique utilized by all groups of people from history that used the horse and the bow as their primary means of waging war. Among the first to put this shooting technique into practice were the Parthians, where the technique gets its name. This video explores the Parthians and the archery technique that still bears their name, the Parthian Shot. The Parthians. First, who were the Parthians, the group among the first to be associated with this technique? At their height, the Parthians ruled over a vast region from roughly 247 BCE to 224 AD. Their land stretched from modern-day Turkey to Pakistan in the west, and from the Persian Gulf in the south to Armenia in the north. The Parthians are thought to have emerged from a Scythian tribe northeast of the Caspian Sea known as the Parni. This once humble tribe would eventually move to overthrow the Greek satraps of Mesopotamia and establish an empire of their own. The region had formerly been conquered by Alexander of Macedon, and upon his death this area would go to one of his entrusted generals, Seleucus I. This would be known as the Seleucid Empire. The Seleucids would become weak due to conflict with the Ptolemies to the east, and this was the moment to seize power for the Parni in 247 BC. After this point in history, Parthia gradually expanded her influence and dominion far and wide, eventually coming into conflict with the Romans in the east. One of the most devastating defeats was dealt to the Romans by Parthia during the Battle of Carrhae. Battle tactics. Parthian battle tactics make use of a combined force of cavalry. The light cavalry for hit-and-run tactics with the bow and arrow, combined with heavy cavalry, the cataphract. With a portfolio of maneuvers similar to all mounted nomadic peoples, the Parthians were a cunning enemy. Some of their most notable and recognizable strategies included the following. The feigned retreat. Seeming to at first fully engage the enemy, then abruptly retreat in seemingly disorganized panic. Then, when the time is right, let loose the Parthian Shot. The retreating cavalry could also lead the enemy into ambushes, quietly hiding and waiting. This tactic involves many disciplines, with timing and coordination being crucial for maximum effect. Relentless harassment. As in the Battle of Carrhae, fought between the Romans and the Parthians, the cavalry archers would not let the Romans rest. Wave after wave of Parthians would ride to just within arrow shot of the Romans, loose their arrows, then retreat before they could be engaged. This causes fatigue, frustration, and a loss of morale for an enemy. Psychological warfare. Large hollow drums were brought in by the Parthians at the Battle of Carrhae. The near-constant low-frequency noise would have been unsettling over a prolonged period of time, even for the most battle-hardened veterans. The relentless income of arrows was designed not only to damage the enemy, but over time break him psychologically. Combining light and heavy cavalry. Heavily armed and armored cavalry deals the death blow at the end of a battle. After being demoralized and fatigued by arrow fire, the cataphracts break through the enemy lines and finish the job. The Battle of Carrhae. An excellent example of Parthian tactics is the Battle of Carrhae. Three of the most powerful and wealthy Romans formed an alliance in the 50s BCE. These were Marcus Licinius, Crassus, Pompeius Magnus, and Julius Caesar. It was Crassus, being 62 years old and realizing he didn't have too many epic campaigns under his belt, who decided to make his move on Parthia. Pompey and Caesar, on the other hand, had famously successful campaigns very early on in their careers. The news came to Rome of internal strife among the Parthians, when, after the death of their king, Phraates III, a power vacuum set in. This was Crassus's time to shine. Because of a treaty with the Parthians, many Roman officials objected to the war as unjust. Nevertheless, Crassus left Rome for Parthian territories in the Middle East on November 14th, 55 BCE. Lead up to the battle. Crassus fields an army of 7 legions, approximately 30,000 infantry, as well as 4,000 light infantry and 4,000 cavalry. The Armenian king, Artavasdes, being under Parthian control, seeks to align himself with the Romans, and so he lends about 6,000 cavalry to Crassus's cause. Artavasdes also proposes that Crassus march through his lands in Armenia and avoid the deserts to the east. In doing so, the Armenian king would also be able to bolster the Roman forces with an additional 30,000 infantry and 10,000 cavalry. For some reason or another, Crassus refused the generous help and marched the straight route towards Mesopotamia. The Parthian king at the time, Orodes II, divided his forces, taking most of the infantry and some cavalry with him to punish the Armenian king for his treachery. He left an all-cavalry force of about 10,000 to his trusted general Surena. The Parthian general also made preparations to have a supply chain of about 1,000 camels to help resupply his archers with fresh arrows. The Parthian king believes this force would be sufficient in harassing and delaying the Romans, but does not expect the events that follow. The battle. Crassus is led by the Osroan chieftain Aramanes, who he thought he could trust, but who was in fact a paid spy for the Parthians, far into the desert away from any water. The Roman army then proceeded to go into panic mode. They realized the Parthians were close and ready to fight in the open. After some disorganization and panic, the Romans form up in a hollow square formation. The Romans would be on a defensive for the remainder of the battle. The Romans repeatedly tried to advance against the Parthians with no success. The mounted archers, upon noticing the advance of the Romans, would retreat. During these well-organized and fast retreats, the Parthians would use their infamous tactic, the Parthian Shot. Under near constant arrow fire, the Romans made haste to come together into the testudo formation. This formation, with Roman shields tightly interlocked, makes for good defense against arrow fire, yet at a cost. And that cost is maneuverability. Conclusion of the battle. Seeing the enemy on the defensive in this manner, Surena orders his heavy cavalry to charge and attempt to break up the Roman formation. This works in causing disarray and heavy casualties among the Romans. When they try to break formation and engage the cataphracts, they retreat and arrows continue to rain down on the battered Roman legions. The onslaught did not let up until nightfall. The Parthians were, however, willing to negotiate a truce the next day. Crassus was reluctant, but the remainder of his army threatened mutiny if he did not go. This day would not get any better for Crassus, however. Things went south during the negotiations and Crassus was killed. All in all, Roman casualties amounted to about 20,000 killed and 10,000 captured, with Crassus himself losing his life. The Parthians took several Roman standards. An epic and disastrous defeat for the Romans, one of the worst, if not the worst, losses for the Roman military in its long history. Performing the Parthian Shot. The Parthian Shot is an advanced horseback archery technique. Before attempting the Parthian Shot, you must be comfortable riding a horse at speed, ideally at a gallop. You should practice riding without reins, as your hands will be occupied with the bow. A short recurve or composite bow is ideal for mounted archery. Use light, fast arrows for better flight and accuracy. Master quick knock and draw. Learn to hold multiple arrows in your bow hand for quick reloading. Position yourself for the shot. As you retreat on horseback, shift your weight slightly forward in the saddle to maintain balance. Turn your torso and look over your shoulder towards the target, keeping your legs firm to control the horse while twisting your upper body. Execution. Draw the bowstring smoothly while keeping your bow arm extended, keeping your eye on the target while maintaining balance. Release the arrow quickly and smoothly. Do not hold it for too long as the horse's motion affects accuracy. Follow through and continue retreating. After the shot, quickly reorient yourself forward and prepare for another shot or maneuver. If needed, reload from your bow hand and fire again. Thank you for watching.